All right. Good morning, everybody, or whatever time of day it happens to be in your particular time zone. Welcome to our webinar today, getting started with HTML5. My name is Mark. I'll be your pilot today. Hope everybody's having a good day. As I've noted on the slide up here, my only request today is that you keep your microphone muted unless you have a specific question, and please feel free. That's another reason that we're here, to answer questions as we go through this particular hour worth of information. So, but it just makes it easier for us as we're making our progress. I'm coming to you from beautiful Memphis, Tennessee today, so I'm in the central time zone. Have a good day, waiting for the rain to come. So we're also recording this, so in case you need to step away or something comes up during the hour that we're going to have together, it will be available on the SkillForge website. They'll make posting on Facebook. So if you'll go to Facebook also, if you participate in Facebook and like our page, SkillForge, you'll see not only information from previous webinars, but also upcoming information that you might find interesting or beneficial in the long run. So I'm going to pop this slide down here for the time being and kind of put that out of the way. I've got one more slide that I'll be making use of a little bit later. For the purposes of demonstration today, I'm going to be using Aptana Studio. I don't know what you may be using for HTML editing software. I find this one to be fairly useful and definitely in everybody's price range because it's free. It has color coding, it has line numbering, it has code hinting or tag hinting. Not only does it have tag hinting for HTML, but it also makes it available for JavaScript as well. So I think, again, you might find it interesting or easy to make use of. If any of you have ever used Eclipse, it should look familiar because it is basically kind of a spin-off of Eclipse. Primary reason I use it is because from a budgetary perspective, free works in my budget. It works in everybody's budget. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. Normally, in other cases, I might use Dreamweaver, but this comes in handy. Very easy to use, very easy to load. Can be found at aptana.com, aptana.com if you're interested. Why HTML5? This is something that's been in the works probably longer than most of us realize. It's been in the works since 2002, which wasn't too long after XHTML was released. But at that particular point, the web was growing by leaps and bounds, and they realized that there were some changes that needed to occur. The web was being used for purposes initially that I don't think Mr. Berners-Lee really realized it would be utilized for in the long run. So the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, started working on some new specifications. They had worked on HTML4, gone to XHTML, trying to make things a little bit more strict, trying to keep us in line probably a little bit so that eliminate some of the freedom that we seem to have when it came to all the different tags, or the freedom that the browser allowed us to have, we'll put it that way. And so they started this working draft of what they were going to refer to as XHTML2, and Apple Computers and Adobe, and there was somebody else that was involved in this, made a proposal to them in about 2004, basically saying, here's the direction we really think things should be going. They were kind of in disagreement with the direction that the W3C was heading. And the W3C really wouldn't accept this particular proposal as it was. And so they took their ball and bat and they went somewhere else to play. And they formed a group that we refer to as WHATWG, W-H-A-T-W-G, the World Hypertext Application Tech, the Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group. There we go. It's a mouthful. They still exist today. They decided they were going to start development on this thing called HTML5. And so they did. And a couple years later, actually, the W3C finally conceded that the approach that they were using for this XHTML 2.0 probably wasn't the best idea in the world. And so at that particular point, this is late 2007, the two groups, WhatWig and the W3C, kind of put their collective heads together and continued working in the direction of HTML, what we now know as HTML5. When it was initially released, which was in about 2008, they told us that it was going to take 22 years before we had a final draft or a final working model of what HTML5 was going to be. And I think when they made that particular statement, that a lot of people kind of went, well, I'm just going to stick with XHTML, because if it's going to take 22 years in order for this to come together, I don't have that much time. I'm working on things right now. So there was kind of an initial delay as far as people making an adaptation, and I think there was some initial delay with some browsers at first in 2008 when it was released. And as it has turned out, at this point, WhatWig and the W3C have kind of, again, split, and they're not really going their separate ways, but they're treating this in two different fashions. The W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, is still the governing body when it comes to code that we're making use of, but they are choosing more of the approach of taking snapshots of what's going on. So the premise now is by next year, by 2014, we will have the first available standard for HTML5. And the interesting thing is that this particular standard is then going to be, through the W3C, taken in specific snapshots, and they are continuing to refer to it as HTML5. WhatWig, on the other hand, now is basically treating this as a living document, which makes perfect sense. As a matter of fact, it should have been a living document all along, because it is in a constant state of change. I mean, ever since you started writing code, if you've been writing code for any length of time, you know it has always been in a state of change. The browser is constantly changing and upgrading and making newer things available to us. So as far as WhatWig is concerned, it's a living document, and they are no longer referring to it as HTML5. They're just calling it HTML. And so we'll see that first standard sometime next year. It's making a lot of things available to us. The first couple things I want to point out to you that I think you'll find beneficial in the long run, and my recommendation, by the way, is whether you think your company is moving to HTML5 or not, it's something that you should do. I've been using pretty much exclusive HTML5 structural tags for the last going on 2.5 years. And I'm going to open a couple different files here to kind of give you an idea. This should look familiar to everybody. This is probably what a lot of you have been using up to this particular point. This is a bare bones document. This would be the starting point if you were using a utility like Aptana or Dreamweaver, or if you still have Go Live from the old days before the acquisition of Macromedia. What other tools are out there? Expression Web, another Microsoft product. SharePoint Designer, another utility that some of you may use. Visual Studio, if you're doing any .NET applications. Those are all all programs that will generate code for us. But you've probably been doing this XHTML. Whether you've moved to 1.1 or not, most of the time you're probably using XHTML transitional, which means you're using a little bit of the, I guess you're going to try to look at it as the best of both worlds. I can use old code if I want to, which means I don't have to use style sheets. Heaven forbid you ever use a font tag, but you might still use a font tag here and there, or a center tag. Those tags have been deprecated, I don't know, since 1998. Or you could be doing this strict. So in other words, instead of seeing the word transitional right there, you might replace that with the word strict, which means your intention is to write all your code exactly the way the XHTML specification says it's supposed to be written. So the one thing that you'll notice right here is that this is incredibly difficult to remember. I don't know about you, but in all the years I've been writing HTML, This has not been one of those things that I remember on a regular basis. If I can get you folks to go ahead and mute your microphones unless you have a specific question, that would be beneficial for all of us. Thank you. Just click the little microphone icon and that'll mute it for you. So I don't know about you, but no, I didn't remember this. If it weren't for the fact that I use a utility like this, Aptana or Dreamweaver or Expression Web, something like that, there was no way I would remember this. Chances were slim I'd even remember the XML namespace to be used for XHTML. And then when it came to putting in meta tags like this is basically, you know, the gist of what this is doing is talking directly to the browser, and it's telling the browser my intention is to use basic Unicode. But again, you know, remembering all of the little pieces of syntax. It's an HTTP equib. By the way, anytime you ever saw this in a meta tag, that was a visual cue to you that that meta tag was specifically designed for the browser. Some meta tags are designed for search engines. This is a specific meta tag that was designed for the browser. And it was designed to tell the browser that you intended to use basic Unicode. So this is the approach that we used for quite a significant amount of time. As a matter of fact, we went from HTML4, which had transitional, strict, and frame set, to XHTML1, which had transitional, strict, and frame set. And then we went to 1.1, which pretty much just left us with the transitional and strict approach, kind of eliminating frame set. So this is what we've used for a long time. This, on the other hand, would be the basic structural approach that you'd use, whoops, for an HTML5 document. That's not the file that I intended to open up. Don't you hate it when you do that? HTML5 basic. There we go. That's it right there. So the premise is, you'll notice that the doc type is incredibly simple. As a matter of fact, I can remember how to write this doc type, considering it only consists of the word doc type and then HTML. But this is, anytime you see a document that begins like this, this is your first visual indication that what you're working with here is HTML5. The second thing that I'll hope you notice is that obviously we have gotten rid of the concept of worrying about it being an XML document, because whether you ever thought about it or not, XHTML was in fact an XML document. And it was making use of an XHTML namespace in order to write all those tags. So the opening HTML tag always had that namespace available. Don't have to worry about that anymore. Also want you to notice how much simpler the meta tag is in order to tell the browser that we're intending to use basic Unicode. We don't have to worry about an HTTP equib. We don't have to think about the concept of the content being text/HTML. It's just nothing more than a meta tag that says character set or char set UTF-8. Sometimes you might see an ISO symbol in there as well if you just plan on using ANSI or ASCII characters. But much, much more simple as far as the approach goes. And again, something that is easy enough to write that you'd be able to remember all this without having to go, no, what came after the transitional? There was some URL in there that pointed to some DTD, I think it was. So much, much easier as far as the basic premise. Also, one of the things that has happened is we have seen some changes in the past. For those of you that have been writing code for any extended period of time, back about 10 years ago, when you wanted to do page layout, what was the basic utility that you used? What was the basic utility that you used in a web page to do page layout about 10 years ago? This is the part where you can unmute your microphones and actually answer if you want to. Anybody doing anything for 10 years or longer?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question is, 10 years ago when you were doing a page layout, how did you do a basic page layout 10 years ago?
Notepad, I think.
Well, I'm not even talking about the utility.
For coding.
As far as writing the code, yeah, as far as writing the code goes, what was the basic overall structural element that you used for page layout purposes? I'll help. It rhymes with
Was it a table?
It was a table, absolutely.
Pencil and paper.
Pencil and paper, yeah. Absolutely. No, I mean, we did at that particular point when we wanted to do a page layout, we did tables, didn't we? You know, HTML only offered us the concept of aligning to the left, aligning things to the right, or putting something in the center, because there was a center tag. Even though, as I mentioned earlier, it's been deprecated since 1998, we still made use of it. Or we used align equals center in a lot of things. So when we wanted something to go not exactly to the left, not exactly to the right, not exactly in the middle, we would use tables for page layout purposes. And then HTML5 came along and CSS was introduced. Cascading style sheets was introduced. But again, it was another one of those things where it took a long time for the browsers to kind of catch up to the concept that developers were really interested in using this concept of CSS for presentation. It was a great idea for page layout. And then there was this shift. There was this shift that had started to occur. And this shift that was occurring was a move from table layouts to using CSS. And when we started using CSS to do a page layout, there was one particular tag that seemed to be the king and queen and royal court of all tags. And that was the div tag. If you take a look at web pages that have been designed in the last 5 years, 5 to 8 years, you'll see dozens upon dozens upon dozens, one more time, upon dozens of div tags. And the interesting thing about a div tag, well, let me ask this question of you folks. What does a div tag mean? What does a div tag actually mean? That's another one of those things where you can answer the question.
It divides the content. Okay. It separates the content into sections.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good answer. And because that's exactly what it is. It is the div, by the way, stands for division. So if anybody ever asks you what a div tag is, it's an abbreviation for division, and it is a means of sectioning off a document. In HTML, there are two semantically meaningless tags. One of them is a block level tag, and one of them is an inline tag. Our semantically meaningless tag for block level elements is the div tag. So if somebody asks you what a div tag is, you go, it's there to put a block of text in, and that is its only purpose, period. It is completely meaningless beyond that. Headings have meaning. You know, we have H1 through H6. That is a means of creating an outline for our document. The most important thing is an H1 tag. The least important thing, if we go so far as a 6th level outline, would be H6. And the purpose of headings is to create a basic structural outline for the document. Paragraphs are there to say this is a paragraph worth of content. You know, we have block quotes to say this is a block level quotation. We have lists. We have tables for now tabular data as opposed to tables being for the purpose of page layout. So tables today are supposed to be used for tabular data. This is a big old table worth of stuff. Here's all of our products, or here's at least, you know, in this particular category, a bunch of products that we make available. We also have an inline meaningless tag. We have tags like M for emphasis, strong to make things bold, both of which are referred to as logical styles, which really come in handy when you're working with accessibility, when you're concerned with accessibility. So for text readers or Braille writers or things of that particular nature, then that becomes an important factor. So the semantically meaningless inline tag that I'm referring to would be span. The only purpose behind a span tag is to say in the middle of a sentence, I want to be able to create style rules for a character or a couple characters or a word or a small grouping of words, but those still need to be in the middle of a sentence. And so that span tag was created for that particular purpose, which means we spent a great deal of time with CSS creating classes and IDs so that we could say this is the navigational part of our document. So we had a div tag with an ID or a class of nav. We had another div tag down at the bottom of the page that had an ID or a class of footer. We had we might have an aside that we wanted to put in there. So it may be a note about a particular piece of information. It might be a further definition of something that we're describing. We said that this was going to be the header area of the document. So we would create a div tag that had an ID or a class of header, which was fine for us when it came to creating our style rules and laying out the page, and it was about as useful as a screen door on a submarine for search engines. The search engines don't look at attributes. All they do is they look at the element. And so they see a body tag and they see all these div tags that are going on inside there. And they'll see an occasional heading and some paragraphs. But all these div tags semantically are completely meaningless when it comes to the concept of a search engine. And so one of the things that HTML5 has given us are the concept of structural tags. So we have some new tags that are available to us, and that's actually what I had open just a moment ago that I want to show you. And we'll just open this up in the browser here instead of looking at the code portion. So these are some of the new semantic or structural elements that HTML5 makes available to us, which include things like, and of course these are in alphabetical order, but article and section go together very well, as a matter of fact. The concept of an article would be just what you think it is. This is a particular article. This is the topic that we're talking about today. Section, on the other hand, is something more like, and by the way, an article is something that could be pulled out and syndicated on its own. As a matter of fact, an article is usually a standalone piece of information. An article about our economy, an article about something specific within our economy today. Maybe a meeting that's going on today, something in the news. Some news blurb would be a good thing to look at when it comes to an article. Section, on the other hand, I guess I'm still old school enough, and some of the original training that I received when it came to web design and web development actually went back to the analogy of thinking of the web and thinking of pages and websites in the same structural way we used to look at a newspaper. So I would look at a section saying, well, you know what, this is the sports section, this is the business section, this is the classified section, this is the entertainment section. So a section can be used in a way of kind of saying, here's a larger chunk of information, and in that larger chunk or section could have several articles that go on inside there. Aside, defines content that may be just like an addendum or a little note, or it may be advertising. I mean, for those of you that are actually putting websites together where you actually have ads that run from a commerce perspective, then an aside would be perfect when it comes to that particular concept. There's a lot of tags, by the way, in here that most of these are going to work in our current generation of browsers, but there are still a few that don't exactly do what we always want them to do, or don't work, period. The one I'm thinking of specifically is, I shouldn't say don't work summary, but the summary and detail only works in one browser. It only works in Chrome. BDI, that's bidirectional. All right, so it defines the part of that might change direction as far as text goes. Figure and figure caption usually end up dealing with things like illustrations or images or diagrams, and then the caption can go along with that as a basic description of the particular image that we're talking about. I mentioned header and footer. There are certain of these that you'll probably find yourself using right out of the gate. Header and footer will probably be those. Article and section makes sense. Mark is kind of interesting because mark is a means of highlighting text. So instead of using a span tag like you might have done in the past to have a particular block of text in the middle of a sentence highlighted, the mark tag will do that. In most modern browsers, that isn't always the case. Meter is there for the sense of giving us a scalar value, a single number within a particular range. We have nav for the purposes of any type of navigation that we might want to make use of. Progress does exactly what you would think. It is a progress bar, and it can be used in conjunction with JavaScript to actually represent the progress of a page loading or the progress of going through a particular, you may be doing an online quiz, and as you progress through the quiz, this progress bar can show progress. Like I said, it's going to be in conjunction with JavaScript. The next three, Ruby, RT, and RP, all deal with annotation for East Asian typography. Time is one of those things that doesn't exactly work in all of our browsers just yet, but will be nice when it comes to a specific way that we want to represent date and time information. And of course, this is a word break. We've already got a line break. Now we've got a word break. So you know, you've seen those long blocks of text, especially URLs, that by the time you get to a particular area, you're going, wow, I want this to wrap. I want to force it to wrap. Well, a word break will force something to wrap when you intend for that particular item to wrap. So I think you'll find those to be beneficial. But you know, we have kind of gotten to this point where not all of our browsers recognize everything that's going on with all these tags. Like I mentioned, detail and summary only work in Google Chrome. There's a website that I'm going to refer you to that I think you should all bookmark. I think you'll find it to be highly beneficial and something that you'll probably use on a regular basis. And the website is caniuse.com. Caniuse.com. And the premise behind this is all information about HTML5, CSS3, scalable vector graphics, and some other things like some of the JavaScript APIs that are being updated. And when you get inside here to the concept of HTML5, you'll be able to come down here, and they do have a section in here, if I'm not mistaken, about semantics of the tag to find out the specifics of new semantic elements right there in the middle. And it will show you. Now, it's interesting because, and by the way, this is our current crop of browsers right there. Chrome 10 and Firefox 23, Chrome 29, Safari 6, Opera 16. And by the way, they have even added, they have mobile browsers over here as well. Matter of fact, they just recently added the IE mobile version over here. So this has only been within the last month or two that that's been added to this particular list. So if you look at this, it looks like all these things work, but interestingly enough, if you start looking at some of the specifics of whether all these new semantic elements work or not, I think you may find that to be just, there may not be 100% support at this particular time. But I think that you will find them to be beneficial. I don't know how much of you pay attention to server logs, or if you make use of Google Analytics to see what people are using, when people show up, what browser they're using, what operating system they're using, and make use of that information when it comes to the code that you put together. I think you'll find that to be beneficial. It can all be found in the server log. That's usually, Google Analytics is going to collect it. Of course, Google Analytics is free. But there's a software package called Web Trends that can be installed on the server that also allows you to just take a look, especially if you're hosting things yourself. And if you're not hosting things yourself, if you're paying somebody for hosting purposes, they should also make these statistics available to you. Keeping tabs on the version of browser that somebody's using, the versions of browsers that most people are using will be beneficial to you in the long run, so that you understand the capabilities as far as any limitations that may be imposed. You don't want to be using stuff that's brand new simply because you can. Only a client that is coming to your website isn't making use of a browser that may be well, anyway, that just won't allow them to see exactly what you want. All right, so keep that in mind. So those are some of the semantic elements that are available. Like I said, bookmark this page. You'll come back to this on a very regular basis to make use of can I use. So when we get past that, of course, CSS3 has been added. We're really not here to specifically address the concept of CSS3. Interestingly enough, we always, from an instructor perspective, we've always kind of treated HTML and CSS as two different animals, as kind of two different approaches to life. And it is even more so today than it has been in the past, because CSS3 not only is being treated completely separate from HTML, but different pieces of CSS3 are being worked on individually. So borders and shading is being worked on in one particular area. Fonts are being worked on in another particular area. Transitions and transformations are being worked on in a different area. So we'll find those things changing in interesting ways, but CSS3 is really a completely separate animal now from HTML. Some of the things also that I think you'll find beneficial that have changed will be form elements. There are some new input types that we can make use of. And I'm going to also reference you to another particular location. There we go. My computer seems to be running a little bit sluggish today, so bear with me. Looks like I opened up Firefox twice now. That's usually the case, right? Doesn't open the first time. So I don't know how many of you have made use of this website. I've heard some. I've made use of it for basic references, although I have heard tell some people find this to be lackluster in certain areas. I think for the basic reasons I have ever referred somebody to this particular website, it's an excellent location just for basic information, including things like learning HTML5. So over there on the left, you can click on Learn HTML5, and then if we find it here, find elements, attributes, links, forms, HTML forms. Of course, if you've worked with HTML forms in the past, you're used to the concept of working with input types. Input type equals text, input type equals radio, input type equals checkbox. We've got text areas, we've got select fields, quite a few different things, but there are some new elements that are available to us when it comes to form elements. So I'm going to come down here to the HTML5 form elements in the new area down here, because I want you to see that there are some new things. And actually I wasn't so much interested in the new form elements as I was in the new input types. There we go, in the new input types. Because we have a whole new section or whole new grouping of input types. Color, date, date time, locale, email, month, number, range, search, tel for telephone, time, URL, week. Interestingly enough, if we were to go back and look at can I use, you would discover that support for some of these items is somewhat limited. As a matter of fact, when it comes to this one right here, I think from a desktop perspective, I think one of the things that you'll find is that, you know, this is kind of a limitation, or how it performs may be somewhat of a limitation. Just to give you an idea here, I actually didn't have a form put together here, so if I open the template that I have been using for a while, which is out here on my desktop, and just come in here and do a basic form tag, and all I'm going to do is put we're just going to do a real basic demonstration with a couple of these, and I have a little piece of video that I want to show you that I think will make this a little bit easier to understand. And I also want you to know that even from a code hinting perspective, Aptana is going, yeah, I understand what that stuff is. I know what date is. You know, we'll just call this date of birth, and we'll give it an ID as well of date of birth. All right. And then I'll put a break in here. And just for grins, we'll give you another option just to see one of the other options that we might make use of. I'm going to demonstrate email and telephone, and that'll be part of this video that I've got up there. That I'm going to show you. I think I'm going to go ahead and do color. We'll go ahead and do color. I don't know how many times you'll actually make use of a need for this, but color is an option that's available to us as well. You know what, I'll just give it a name and an ID as well. Oops. And I'm not even going to worry with the submit button at this particular point. And what I'm going to end up doing is, I just saved over my template. Don't you hate it when you do that? I'll go back and fix that later. In order for this to work, in order for this to actually, well, let's just show you what it would look like in Internet Explorer. So it looks like two text boxes in Internet Explorer at this particular point. So not a whole lot going on there. By the way, from a form perspective, when a browser doesn't recognize an input type, or if you mistype an input type, in other words, if I wanted to put in radio and I misspell the word radio as I'm typing it, in a form it automatically defaults to a text field. So if you ever see text fields where you didn't anticipate seeing text fields, go look at the spelling of your input type. But also that's how a browser is going to treat it when it doesn't recognize one of these new input types. So that would end up being what we see there for date and color, just two text fields. But if I were to open this same thing up, let's see, this is on my desktop here, because I just overwrote my template. If I come over here and open this with Chrome, because Chrome does support what we're talking about here, you'll notice that date now offers me, when I click, a calendar. And I can come in here and I can move forward in my calendar, and I can say, you know what, December 25th is a day that I don't plan to be at work, so I'll just go in and choose that particular date. There are two browsers, two desktop browsers that understand what date is. That would be Chrome and Opera. All right. And then color actually brings up the Windows color picker. You can come in here and make a particular color choice and click on that, and it'll actually put the color value in there for you. And again, Chrome, or at this particular point, Chrome and Opera are the only two that really seem to support that particular concept. All right. Now, so in a lot of cases, people would go, well, if there are only two browsers that support that, then I don't really think I'll ever make use of date. If none of the browsers really do much support for telephone or for email, why should I bother making use of these? Well, one of the things that we are concerning ourselves with today that we didn't have to think about a number of years ago are mobile devices. Responsive web design is a big deal today, and responsive web design is a big deal because we're talking about people making use of smartphones and tablets and then desktops as well. And so those are considerations that we have to think about. So let me show you a little video, and please excuse the high quality here. This was myself and my iPad shooting my iPhone to kind of demonstrate what's going on here for you. And so I've got it in several different formats here. Let's open this up, and oh, let's not do that. That's sideways. Let's do the MP4. Let's open this up in QuickTime though. For whatever reason, my MP4 doesn't want to play in Windows Media Player. So let's open this with QuickTime. There we go. You know, I'm not worried about the audio. This is just for the purposes of demonstration. Hello, QuickTime. There we go. Let's maximize that. And then let's get this play here. So this is a page that I put together that's actually on the web, and it has a standard text field at the very top. It's using date, email, and tell to show you what happens differently when you start using these on smart devices as opposed to just desktop. Also, I want you to notice, and this is something new that has just happened within the last couple of months. Name, you can't see it, but date of birth is also that way, and email are required fields. Required is a new attribute that you can add to HTML5 input types that actually will do basic validation. In other words, if you leave it completely empty, a little message will pop up telling you that this is a required field. Something that has just been added to a couple browsers in the last month or two is this light pink background. That light pink background is now a visual cue that this is a required field. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just touch on the name field, and that just shows you that when you do that, and I'm using it, this is an iPhone 5, so when you do that, it just brings up a standard keypad, which is what you would expect. All I want to do is type some text inside here. So I'm not going to type anything there. That's just to demonstrate it's a standard keypad. If I want to put in a date, though, notice it automatically brings up the option for me on my iPhone to choose a legitimate date. I can choose the month and the day and the year by using the built-in spinners that the iPhone makes available to make use of a particular date. So yeah, I was born in 1990. I had dream on it. Anyway, we'll go ahead and put that in there. No, sorry about that. My computer's just not having a good day. The next one we're going to do is email, and I want you to notice that we touch the field. It automatically gives us the @ symbol and a dot here on the bottom of the keyboard in order for us to make use of putting an email address in place. That's my Dana White impersonation, by the way, with my little finger down there. You see, we got the @ symbol and the dot. And you can go ahead and insert that. And the next thing we're going to do is the next input type is going to be tel for telephone. And of course, when you do that, it automatically brings up the numeric keypad for putting in somebody's phone number. Instead of having to bring up a standard keypad, switch to numbers, type numbers across the top, it automatically recognizes the fact that you're putting a telephone number. This, by the way, is a legitimate phone number here in Memphis. Feel free to call that number up there. That'll be time capture here. That's just exactly what we want, right? And I just had another phone number at the bottom of my computer twice. But the basic principle is, even if you don't intend to make use of these for a desktop, don't worry much about the fact that the desktop isn't going to recognize the fact that this is a date field and this is supposed to be an email address and this is supposed to be a phone number if, in fact, one of your major considerations is the fact that you are also making a website for the purposes of mobile devices today. So that's one of the huge advantages to making use of some of these new input types because they're going to be more responsive on a mobile device. And then there are a couple browsers that will be very responsive when it comes to the desktop. I don't know what browser you use. I don't know what browser most of your clients are going to make use of. But the basic premise at this particular point is that the #1 browser since May of last year, May of 2012, is Google Chrome. Google Chrome at this particular point is somewhere around 40 to 42% of the market share. All versions of Internet Explorer combined, that would be 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, all added together, come in second place at under 30%, 20, 26, 27%, somewhere in that particular range. So if you pick any one of those as a separate browser, they come in third place because Firefox is somewhere lingering at this point around 20 or just under 20%. And then, of course, Safari and Opera. Safari would be next, depending on whose numbers you look at, you know, anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7%. And then, of course, Opera being in that 1 to 2% as it is. And by the way, Opera is a very good browser. There was a time where Opera had annoying ads if you wanted the free version of it, but Opera at this particular point actually is a good browser. And Opera is the only browser that seems to understand all of the HTML5 form elements. Matter of fact, there's another website that I think you'll find beneficial when it comes to saying, or demonstrating to you what your current generation of browser is capable of doing. Doing. And I'm going to open it up in several different browsers here just to show you what we're referring to. The name of the website, by the way, is HTML5test.com. Don't remember whose birthday it is today for the Google scribble there. This is Internet Explorer 9, by the way. This is out of a possible score of 500. I don't know if anybody's using Internet Explorer 10. Internet Explorer 10, by the way, scores 414 points last time I checked, compared to IE9, which scores 138 points. All right. The best browser when it comes to score is actually Chrome. Somebody said they're using 10, right? Who was that? Yeah. Chrome scores 463 out of a possible 500 points. And of course, by the way, it even shows you right here, you know, what you're doing with all of the browsers, with all the current generation of browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Opera, they all update automatically. Chrome is the one that does it the most seamlessly. It kind of does it without you even realizing it's doing an update in the background. Firefox, on the other hand, depending, and it may be even in my settings that I've told it to kind of prompt me, but Firefox updates automatically. Opera will update automatically. Safari updates automatically. Internet Explorer finally with IE10 will update automatically, but before IE10 it's all a manual update, or at least without having to go into your settings for Windows updates. For Firefox, let's just open a different tab here to do this. Firefox is going to be in the mid 400s if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's the low 400s. It's been a while since I've looked actually, and this is Firefox 23. Oh, this is 24, so that's still at 414. So in the low 400s. I do have Opera installed, so let's take a look at Opera. Opera 16, I think, is the newest version. I'm not sure if I have updated recently here because I mostly install Opera for the purposes of demonstration as opposed to my actual usage of it. Hello? There we go. Okay, 404. And then this is unusual because there aren't too many people who actually make use of Safari on a Windows machine anymore. I'm going to close down a couple of these additional browsers since my computer seems to be a little bit on the lagging behind perspective here. We're running a little slow, so let's close a couple things I'm not using at this point. There we go. I closed both of those accidentally. And Safari, by the way, is no longer made for Windows. This is Safari 5 point something or another. Like that technical jargon, something or another. But even 5 scores 319 points. Current version has been 6 for quite some time. As a matter of fact, Windows hasn't supported, Apple hasn't supported Safari for Windows in a while now. Yeah, this is 5.1.7. So anyway, it's a good website. And by the way, I'm not showing you all of the information of these 500 points worth of data that are available here, but you can scroll down to see everything that is available in that scoring, and see what elements in the current generation of browser you're dealing with would be something that you might make use of. So that was HTML5test.com. Can be a good reference location to make use of. The last thing that we're going to take a look at here before we move along for the day is the fact that for those of you that use audio and video on a website, the issues that you've been faced with in the past is, well, was it something that I needed Real Player for? Was it something that I needed the Flash player for? Was it something that I needed QuickTime to play? Was it something that I needed Windows Media Player to play? I mean, we've had these different audio and video formats for quite some time, and all of them, all these years, have required plugins in order for them to work. And of course, the big drawback to a plugin is, does anybody and everybody have the plugin that we're talking about? And of course, the answer is generally no. That's why at one particular point, when Flash Video was made available, everybody jumped on that particular bandwagon because the Flash player was the single most installed plugin that anybody was making use of. Well, in the last few years, a few things have changed, and Apple has introduced the iPhone and also the iPad. And as we know, before Mr. Jobs passed away, there were some not too kind words that he had to say when it came to the concept of Flash. Those devices, the iPhone from its first generation through the newest generation, the 5S and 5C, don't support Flash. The iPad doesn't support Flash because Mr. Jobs said if we wanted to do anything, then we would use HTML5 and we would use the concept of Canvas and JavaScript in order to create the animation that we were specifically looking for. And when it came to audio and video, what he was going to depend on was the concept that HTML5 makes available its own ability to play audio and video without a plugin. Let me open up the particular file that I was going to use to demonstrate this with, which is right here. And the premise is, and I'm just going to do this for the purposes of video, you'll notice that we have a video tag. As a matter of fact, if I wanted to, I could just put one tag in there and put source attributes inside here. But it makes sense to do it this way because not all of our browsers support the same video format. As a matter of fact, even Firefox has changed over the time period as far as what it would support. Initially, it would only support OGG Vorbis video. And now it is supporting WebM, which is somewhat based on the same codec. MP4 was one of those. It's also pretty well accepted as far as the video format goes. In the video tag, if I leave this attribute out, then I eliminate the playback controls, and the browser indicates what those playback controls are going to be. So if I open this up without the controls attribute inside here, there's no play, there's no pause, there's no volume control, there's no clicking a button to go full screen if I want to. And of course we'll put the width and the height in because we're indicating how much space we intend for that video to make use of. In what regard, Linda, are you talking about for your 508 compliance? Come back to that in just a second. So in this particular case, I've chosen to give myself the video tag as a container, and then there is actually a new source element that has a src attribute that will actually point to the file that we're dealing with. The two that I have in here, the MP4 and WebM, should accommodate all of the current generation of browsers, although for whatever reason, IE9 is supposed to read an MP4. It is not reading this particular MP4, and so I don't have an answer for that specific little idiosyncrasy. This meta tag is supposed to help when you're having issues with compatibility, but doesn't seem to be handling it. But if I do browse this in Firefox, just to show you, it's the same view that I showed you just a moment ago, so it's really big. But I'm going to scroll down here because I want you to see that the player controls look a little bit different on different browsers. We do have a complete volume control. It's available here as it moves along, and it has a total elapsed time as well as a full screen button that you can make use of right there. So if I go full screen, it'll do that. And of course you see this a lot now with this allow and deny. So that's Firefox. In Chrome, if I open this up in Chrome, I'm not going to open it up simultaneously since my computer seems to be lagging somewhat here. And we'll see the playback controls here for Chrome look a little bit different. Notice the way they do disappear when you move your cursor over the volume here. As well as all right. I haven't opened this in Opera since I put this together. Let's see what happens here in Opera. Opera, the uncooperative browser. There we go. So Opera's playback will look a little bit different. Matter of fact, Opera's playback controls look a whole lot like playback controls in QuickTime. A little bit smaller down here across the bottom. I don't know if it's possible for everybody to see that, but you do have complete volume control as well. So the benefit to doing that, of course, is the fact that I don't have to worry about plugins. If, in fact, I'm concerned with backward compatibility, then it is possible to create like a Swift file and use the embed tag. Interestingly enough, the embed tag has been around for quite some time. It was available in Netscape for a long period of time. Matter of fact, Netscape used embed, and Internet Explorer used the object tag. But embed now actually is part of the HTML5 specification. So you could put at the end of it, inside the video tag right here, we could do an embed tag. As a matter of fact, you'll even see it's part of what Aptana makes available. And then I could put a source attribute in here, and I could point to a Swift file, a Flash file. And if it doesn't recognize the video tag, it's going to ignore those tags and just work its way into the tag. And when it finds embed, then it'll go ahead and play that Flash file. It's still going to need a plugin. So this is that kind of a fallback scenario that we're talking about when we want to have video and we're worried about backward compatibility. We're worried about people having a slightly older version of a browser. So the embed tag makes that available to us. Or if you need to go back even further than that, an object tag can also be used. So we could do two source attributes and then have the object tag the exact same way we would have used an object tag when we were just inserting flash or flash video. All right, the hour actually has come and gone on us. I do want to point out one thing to everybody, and that's the fact that we do have some classes that are available through SkillForge. The URLs are available right here. We have a basic HTML5 training class. It's a 2-day class, and this class is for people who have worked with HTML in the past and are interested in what's new. And I will let you know right up front, there's a lot of JavaScript in this particular class because making use of things like web storage and Canvas and even some of the player controls that we can make use of for HTML5 audio and video. JavaScript kind of comes in handy for that. Then there's also a 2-day HTML5 and CSS training class. This is more of the beginner's approach. And it's 2 days, 2 different books of just some basic HTML5 and CSS information. These are the addresses where these classes can be found on the SkillForge website. Appreciate your time and your attention. I hope this information was beneficial to you, that there was something that you got out of it. And again, just thank you for your attention. Anybody have any specific question, I guess, before we bail? No? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. If that's the case, and again, thank you, and everybody have a good day. Take care. Thank you.